The small coastal town of Seabreeze had always been a place where nothing much happened. Nestled between rolling green hills and the endless expanse of the ocean, it was the kind of place where people lived simple lives, untouched by the chaos of the outside world. Fishermen woke up before dawn to cast their nets into the sea, children played barefoot on the sandy beaches, and neighbors greeted each other warmly as they went about their day. Life moved at its own gentle pace, predictable and comforting. But all of that changed one cold, foggy morning when something extraordinary returned to their quiet harbor, a ghost ship named the Mariner's Pride. The fishing boat had vanished without a trace 5 years ago during a violent storm. Its crew of 6 men had been presumed dead, lost to the merciless waves. The townsfolk mourned them deeply, holding memorial services and lighting candles along the shore in their memory. Over time, life moved on, but the wound left by their disappearance never fully healed. And so, when the Mariner's Pride drifted silently back into the harbor, battered and broken yet eerily intact, it sent shockwaves through the community. At first glance, the ship looked like any other vessel ravaged by the sea. Its sails were torn, dangling limply from the mast. The hull was scratched and gouged, evidence of battles fought against rocks and reefs. Barnacles clung stubbornly to its wooden surface, and seaweed draped over its sides like mourning veils. Yet there was something profoundly unsettling about the way it moved, or rather didn't move. Unlike other ships that rocked gently with the tide, the Mariner's Pride sat perfectly still, as if held in place by an invisible hand. There was no sound coming from it, not even the creaking of wood or the fluttering of loose ropes. It was as though the ship itself was holding its breath, waiting. The townspeople gathered cautiously on the docks, staring at the mysterious vessel with a mixture of awe and dread. No one dared approach it at first. Whispers filled the air. "It's cursed," some said. Others speculated that pirates might have taken the crew hostage and abandoned the ship here. But none of these theories could explain the strange feeling that hung over the harbor like a thick fog. The air felt heavier than usual, almost electric, making the hairs on the back of people's necks stand on end. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, more primal, as if the very fabric of reality had shifted slightly around the ship. Finally, curiosity got the better of Old Tom, the town's retired fisherman who had once sailed alongside the missing crew. He shuffled forward, leaning heavily on his cane, his weathered face etched with determination. "If anyone knows this ship, it's me," he muttered under his breath, ignoring the protests of those urging him to stay back. Slowly, he climbed, aboard, his boots thudding softly against the deck. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Ropes coiled neatly, barrels stacked securely, nets folded and stowed away. But then he noticed the symbols. Carved into the wooden walls of the ship were intricate patterns that shimmered faintly, glowing with a soft, pulsating light. They weren't random scratches or damage from the elements. These markings were deliberate, precise, almost like writing in some unknown language. As Old Tom ran his fingers over them, a sudden chill shot through his body. The symbols felt warm to the touch, vibrating faintly beneath his skin as if alive. He stumbled backward, heart pounding, and called out to the crowd below. "There's something wrong with this ship," he shouted, his voice trembling. "It ain't ours anymore." News of the glowing symbols spread quickly, drawing larger crowds to the harbor. Scientists and researchers from nearby cities arrived within hours, eager to study the phenomenon. They brought cameras, scanners, and other equipment, setting up makeshift labs right on the dock. The symbols defied explanation. They weren't painted or burned onto the wood. They seemed to emanate from within the material itself, as though the ship had absorbed whatever energy created them. When analyzed, the patterns emitted low-frequency vibrations that caused mild discomfort in those exposed to them for too long. Some reported headaches, while others described vivid dreams of vast machines floating in space, their metallic surfaces gleaming ominously under alien suns. Meanwhile, strange things began happening to those who spent too much time near the ship. A young boy who had touched the symbols developed a fever overnight, muttering incoherently about stars falling and eyes watching. An elderly woman claimed she saw shadowy figures moving across the deck late at night, their forms flickering like static on a television screen. Even animals avoided the area, refusing to come near the harbor altogether. The townsfolk grew increasingly uneasy, locking their doors at night and keeping their children indoors. Something unnatural had returned with the mariner's pride, and no one knew what it wanted or what it might do next. Despite the growing fear, a few brave souls continued to investigate. Among them was Dr. Emily Carter, a marine biologist who specialized in unexplained phenomena. She had studied similar cases of ships returning after long disappearances, though none quite like this. Her fascination with the glowing symbols led her to spend hours aboard the vessel, meticulously documenting every detail. One evening, as she traced the carvings with her finger, she felt a sudden jolt, a sharp, searing pain that shot through her arm. Gasping, she pulled away and stumbled back, clutching her wrist. That night, she dreamed of colossal structures looming in the void of space, their shapes jagged and menacing. Voices whispered in her mind, speaking words she couldn't understand, but somehow knew were meant for her. By the end of the week, the entire town was gripped by paranoia. Rumors swirled about aliens, government cover-ups, and ancient curses. Some believed the ship had been abducted by extraterrestrial beings and returned as a warning. Others thought it was part of a secret experiment gone horribly wrong. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. The mariner's pride was no longer just a fishing boat. It had become something else entirely, something alien, unknowable, and dangerous. As days turned into weeks, the ship remained anchored in the harbor, unmoving and unchanged, yet its presence weighed heavily on everyone, casting a shadow over the once peaceful town. People avoided looking at it directly, afraid of what they might see, or worse, what might see them. Children stopped playing near the water, and fishermen refused to venture out to sea, claiming the ocean itself felt different now, colder and darker than before. The return of the mariner's pride had shattered the illusion of safety that the people of Seabreeze had clung to for so long. For the first time in their lives, they realized how fragile their existence truly was, and how little they understood about the universe beyond their shores. The days following the discovery of the mariner's pride were filled with a mix of dread and fascination. The entire town of Seabreeze seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something, anything to happen. Scientists continued their investigations, but the glowing symbols remained an enigma. Each attempt to decode them only raised more questions than answers. Meanwhile, the strange occurrences surrounding the ship grew more frequent and unsettling. Dr. Emily Carter became increasingly obsessed with uncovering the truth. She spent long hours aboard the vessel, poring over every inch of it, hoping to find some clue that would explain what had happened to the crew and why the ship had returned so mysteriously. Her colleagues warned her about spending too much time near the symbols, citing reports from others who had experienced disturbing side effects. But Emily couldn't stay away. There was something magnetic about the ship, as if it were calling out to her in a language she couldn't quite understand yet felt compelled to decipher. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Emily decided to explore deeper into the ship's interior. Armed with a flashlight and her notebook, she climbed down into the lower decks, where the air was damp and heavy with the smell of salt water and decay. The wooden walls creaked softly as she moved, and shadows danced eerily across the narrow corridors. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon something extraordinary, a hidden compartment behind a false panel in the wall. Her heart raced as she pried the panel open, revealing a small chamber inside. Within it lay an object unlike anything she had ever seen, a crystalline artifact, roughly the size of a human fist, shimmering faintly with an inner light. Its surface was smooth and cool to the touch, etched with intricate patterns that resembled the glowing symbols carved into the ship's walls. As soon as her fingers brushed against it, a surge of energy coursed through her body, making her gasp. Visions flooded her mind, images of vast metallic structures floating in the void of space, surrounded by swirling clouds of stars. She saw beings unlike humans, their forms sleek and angular, moving with precision and purpose. And then just As suddenly as they appeared, the visions vanished, leaving her disoriented but strangely exhilarated. Emily carefully wrapped the artifact in cloth and brought it back to her makeshift lab on the dock. Over the next few days, she worked tirelessly to analyze it, running tests and consulting with experts in fields ranging as far as astrophysics and linguistics. What she discovered was both astonishing and terrifying. The artifact wasn't just a piece of alien technology, it was a communication device. Embedded within its structure were mathematical sequences and harmonic frequencies that corresponded to universal constants, suggesting it was designed to transmit information across unimaginable distances. But the most chilling revelation came when they managed to partially activate it. Using specialized equipment, Emily and her team amplified the artifact signal, projecting it onto a large screen. To their astonishment, the glowing symbols began rearranging themselves, forming new patterns that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. Then, a message appeared, not in words, but in images and sensations. They saw planets consumed by fire, oceans boiling away, forests reduced to ash. The message was clear. Earth was being watched, studied, and judged. Humanity's reckless exploitation of natural resources, pollution, and disregard for ecological balance had drawn the attention of these extraterrestrial observers. And now, they were preparing to intervene. Word of the artifact's discovery spread quickly, reaching not only the scientific community but also conspiracy theorists and media outlets around the world. Reporters descended upon Seabreeze, turning the once quiet town into a chaotic hub of activity. News vans lined the streets, cameras flashed incessantly, and helicopters circled overhead, capturing footage of the eerie ship still anchored in the harbor. The townsfolk, already on edge, grew even more agitated. Some demanded that the ship and the artifact be destroyed, fearing they might bring doom upon humanity. Others argued that destroying them could provoke retaliation from whatever force had sent them. Amidst the chaos, a group of locals led by Old Tom formed a vigilante committee to protect the ship. Despite his initial fear, Tom had come to believe that the mariner's pride held the key to understanding what was happening and possibly stopping it. He rallied volunteers to stand guard around the clock, armed with nothing more than fishing rods and determination. "We lost our boys once," he told anyone who would listen. "We ain't losing this ship, too." As tensions escalated, so did the strange phenomena associated with the ship. People reported seeing flashes of light in the sky at night, accompanied by low-frequency hums that rattled windows and set dogs howling. Fishermen claimed the ocean currents had changed overnight, pulling boats off course and creating whirlpools, where none had existed before. Even the weather seemed to rebel, with sudden storms rolling in without warning, drenching the town in torrential rain and whipping the sea into frothy fury. Then, one fateful morning, everything changed. A fisherman named Jake, who had been out early despite the warnings, radioed in a frantic message. "There's something in the water," he shouted, his voice trembling with panic. "It's huge, bigger than anything I've ever seen." Moments later, his transmission cut off abruptly. When search teams arrived, all they found was his empty boat, drifting aimlessly in the waves. Back in town, people gathered anxiously on the beach, scanning the horizon for any sign of Jake or whatever had taken him. But instead of answers, they witnessed something far more terrifying. High above the ocean, the clouds parted, revealing a massive shape descending slowly from the heavens. It was a star destroyer, an enormous spacecraft bristling with weapons and technology far beyond human comprehension. Its surface gleamed menacingly in the sunlight, and its sheer size dwarfed everything below it. Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd as realization dawned. The aliens had arrived. For a moment there was silence, a collective intake of breath as everyone processed what they were seeing. Then pandemonium erupted. People screamed and ran in every direction, desperate to escape the looming threat. Cars screeched down narrow roads, mothers clutched their children tightly, and some collapsed to their knees in prayer. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Emily Carter stood frozen, staring up at the behemoth in the sky. Her mind raced with thoughts of the artifact, the glowing symbols, and the message they had decoded. Was this the intervention the aliens had warned about? Had humanity's recklessness finally caught up with them? Old Tom grabbed her arm, snapping her out of her trance. "We gotta do something, Doc," he urged, his voice hoarse with urgency. "If that thing's here because of us, maybe we can stop it. But how?" The question hung heavily in the air as the Star Destroyer hovered ominously above Seabreeze, casting a shadow over the town. For now, it made no move to attack. Instead, it emitted a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the ground, causing teeth to chatter and knees to buckle. It was as if the ship itself was speaking, delivering a message that transcended language. Whether it was a warning, a declaration, or something else entirely, no one could say for sure. In the days that followed, the presence of the Star Destroyer dominated every waking thought. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying military forces and attempting to establish communication, but the aliens remained silent, their intentions unclear. All eyes turned to the Mariner's Pride, still anchored in the harbor, glowing brighter than ever before. Whatever secrets it held, they were humanity's last hope, and perhaps its greatest danger. The arrival of the Star Destroyer transformed Seabreeze and the entire world into a place gripped by fear and uncertainty. The massive alien vessel loomed above the town like a dark omen, its metallic surface reflecting sunlight in sharp, blinding glints. It didn't attack immediately, but its mere presence was enough to send shockwaves through every corner of human civilization. Governments scrambled to respond, deploying fighter jets, satellites, and communication systems in an attempt to establish contact with the invaders. Yet all efforts were met with silence. The Star Destroyer simply hovered there, as if observing, waiting. In Seabreeze, life ground to a halt. The once bustling harbor was now deserted, save for the Mariner's Pride, which seemed to pulse with energy under the shadow of the colossal spacecraft. People barricaded themselves indoors, peering out through cracks in their curtains too, afraid to step outside. Those who dared venture near the dock spoke in hushed tones about how the glowing symbols on the ship had intensified, radiating a light so bright it hurt to look directly at them. Some claimed they could hear whispers emanating from the artifact Dr. Emily Carter had discovered, a low rhythmic hum that resonated deep within their chests, making their hearts race uncontrollably. Dr. Carter herself barely slept during those days. Her lab became her sanctuary, though she often felt as if she were losing her grip on reality. The visions triggered by the artifact grew more vivid and frequent, invading her dreams and even creeping into her waking hours. She saw sprawling cities floating in space, connected by beams of light. She witnessed armies of sleek, insect-like creatures moving in perfect synchronization, building structures that defied physics. And always there was the recurring image of Earth, a fragile blue sphere surrounded by darkness, being consumed by flames. Each vision left her shaken, yet she couldn't ignore the sense that these images carried a message meant specifically for her. Old Tom, meanwhile, refused to give up hope. Despite his age and frailty, he rallied the townsfolk, urging them to stay united. "We've faced storms before," he reminded them during impromptu gatherings in dimly lit living rooms. "This ain't no different. We just gotta figure out what they want and show 'em we're worth saving." His words inspired some, but others dismissed him as a foolish old man clinging to outdated ideals. Still, a small group of volunteers remained loyal to him, standing guard around the Mariner's Pride and assisting Dr. Carter however they could. As days passed, the Star Destroyer began to take action. At first, the changes were subtle, a shift in wind patterns, an unusual warmth in the air, but soon the effects became impossible to ignore. The seas churned violently, swallowing ships whole. Hurricanes formed without warning, tearing apart coastal communities far beyond Seabreeze. Earthquakes shook cities to their foundations, splitting roads and toppling buildings. It was as though the planet itself had turned against humanity, unleashing its fury in ways never seen before. Scientists worldwide pieced together fragments of data and concluded that the Star Destroyer wasn't merely observing, It was actively manipulating Earth's environment. The aliens weren't here to negotiate or coexist, they were here to reset. Humanity's reckless exploitation of natural resources had pushed the planet to the brink of collapse, and the invaders viewed themselves as saviors, tasked with restoring balance, even if it meant wiping out the species responsible for the far damage. Back in Seabreeze, the situation reached a breaking point when the artifact aboard the Mariner's Pride activated unexpectedly. One evening, as Dr. Carter examined it under a microscope, the crystalline object emitted a burst of light so intense it blinded everyone in the room temporarily. When their vision cleared, they found themselves staring at a holographic projection hovering above the artifact. It depicted a series of scenes: lush forests thriving without human interference, oceans teeming with life, skies free of pollution. Then came darker images: cities crumbling, people fleeing in terror, the earth reduced to a barren wasteland. Finally, the projection shifted to show the Star Destroyer hovering over the planet, its weapons firing beams of energy that scorched the land below. The message was clear. This was humanity's future, unless drastic changes were made. But time was running out. The aliens had already begun their work, and there was no indication they would stop. Desperation drove Dr. Carter and her team to dig deeper into the artifact's secrets. They hypothesized that it might serve as a bridge between humans and the invaders, a way to communicate directly rather than relying on cryptic projections. Using advanced equipment borrowed from nearby universities, they attempted to interface with the artifact, feeding it algorithms designed to mimic universal mathematical constants. Hours turned into days, and just when hope seemed lost, something remarkable happened. The artifact responded. A surge of energy coursed through the lab, knocking over chairs and scattering papers. A voice, not spoken aloud but felt within their minds, addressed them. It was calm, almost soothing, yet carried an undeniable authority. "Your kind has disrupted the balance," it said. "You have taken without giving, destroyed without rebuilding. This cannot continue." Dr. Carter stepped forward, trembling but determined. "We understand our mistakes," she replied, speaking aloud despite knowing the entity could read her thoughts. "But we can change. Give us a chance to prove ourselves." There was a long pause during which the weight of the moment pressed heavily on everyone present. Then, the voice spoke again. "Prove it." Those two words echoed in their minds, long after the connection ended. The artifact dimmed, returning to its dormant state, leaving the team stunned but galvanized. For the first time since the Star Destroyer's arrival, they had a glimmer of hope. But proving humanity's worth wouldn't be easy, not when the invaders had already demonstrated their power and resolve. Old Tom wasted no time spreading the news throughout the town. He gathered as many people as he could in the community center, explaining what Dr. Carter had learned. "They're giving us a shot," he declared, his voice cracking with emotion. "But we gotta act fast. We can't let 'em think we're beyond saving." A plan quickly took shape. With the help of local engineers, scientists, and even fishermen, they repurposed an old military spacecraft stored in a nearby hangar. It wasn't much, but it was the only vehicle capable of reaching the Star Destroyer. Armed with the artifact and a desperate plea for mercy, a small team volunteered to make the perilous journey. Among them were Dr. Carter, Old Tom, who insisted on joining despite protests about his age, and Jake, the fisherman whose earlier encounter with the unknown had sparked panic. As they prepared for launch, the Star Destroyer unleashed another wave of destruction. Lightning tore across the sky, setting fire to forests miles away. The ground quaked violently, forcing the team to delay their departure until the worst of the storm subsided. Watching from the safety of the hangar, they realized the enormity of what they were about to face. Failure wasn't an option, not when the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. Finally, the moment arrived. The spacecraft roared to life, its engines rumbling like thunder as it ascended into the night sky. Below, the townsfolk watched anxiously, holding their breath as the tiny craft approached the gargantuan Star Destroyer. Would the aliens listen, or would they see humanity as beyond redemption? Inside the spacecraft, the atmosphere was tense but resolute. Dr. Carter clutched the artifact tightly, feeling its faint vibrations beneath her fingertips. Old Tom muttered prayers under his breath, while Jake stared out the window at the looming, alien vessel, his knuckles white from gripping the armrest. None of them knew what awaited them aboard the Star Destroyer, but they were determined to try. After all, humanity's survival depended on it. The spacecraft carrying Dr. Emily Carter, Old Tom, Jake, and 2 other volunteers shuddered violently as it approached the Star Destroyer. The alien vessel loomed larger with every passing second, its metallic surface gleaming ominously under the pale light of the moon. It was impossible not to feel insignificant in its shadow, like a speck of dust daring to challenge a mountain. The team exchanged nervous glances but remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. They had no guarantee that the artifact would protect them or even ensure they were heard. All they could do was hope. As they drew closer, the ship's defenses activated. A shimmering energy field surrounded the Star Destroyer, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. Alarms blared inside the cockpit as warning lights flashed red. "Hold steady," shouted one of the pilots, gripping the controls tightly. The spacecraft shook again, this time more violently, as if caught in an invisible storm. But then, something extraordinary happened. The artifact began to glow brighter, pulsating in rhythm with the energy field outside. Its light filled the cabin, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Slowly the barrier parted, creating a narrow corridor through which the spacecraft passed unharmed. Inside the Star Destroyer, the environment was alien, yet strangely beautiful. The walls seemed to shift and shimmer, as though made of liquid metal. Strange symbols floated in midair, glowing faintly and rearranging themselves constantly. The air hummed with a low-frequency vibration that resonated deep within their bones. Despite the awe-inspiring surroundings, the team couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every step they took echoed unnaturally, as if the ship itself were alive and listening. Guided by the artifact's vibrations, they moved cautiously through the labyrinthine corridors. None of them spoke. The weight of where they were and what they were about to attempt was too immense for words. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a central chamber. In the middle of the room stood a towering structure, a crystalline console pulsing with multicolored lights. Surrounding it were several alien beings, their forms sleek and angular, just as Dr. Carter had seen in her visions. Their eyes, if they could be called that, glowed with an inner light, fixing upon the intruders with an intensity that made their skin crawl. For a moment there was silence. Then one of the aliens stepped forward, its movements fluid and deliberate. It extended a limb-like appendage toward the humans, stopping just short of touching them. The artifact in Dr. Carter's hands reacted immediately, emitting a brilliant flash of light that illuminated the entire chamber. The alien tilted its head slightly as if intrigued or perhaps amused by the display. Without hesitation, Emily stepped forward, holding the artifact out toward the creature. "We're here to talk," she said, her voice trembling but firm. She knew the aliens didn't need verbal communication, they could read minds, but she wanted to make her intentions clear. "We've made mistakes, terrible ones, but we're capable of change. Give us a chance." The alien paused, studying her intently. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the artifact floated out of Emily's grasp and hovered between her and the alien. It began rotating slowly, projecting images into the air around them. Scenes of Earth's destruction played out once more, forests burning, oceans rising, cities crumbling. But this time new images followed, people planting trees, cleaning polluted rivers, developing sustainable technologies. These were humanity's efforts at redemption, captured by cameras and news reports from across the globe. The message was clear: humanity wasn't perfect, but it was trying. The alien's expression, if such a thing existed, didn't change. Instead, it raised another appendage, and the console behind it lit up with a cascade of colors. A holographic projection appeared above it, showing Earth from space. The planet looked vibrant and healthy, its ecosystems thriving. But then cracks began to form across its surface, spreading rapidly until the image shattered into darkness. Another projection replaced it, this time depicting Earth restored, green and blue and teeming with life. However, humanity was absent. The implication was unmistakable. The invaders planned to reset the planet and eliminate its current inhabitants in the process. Old Tom stepped forward, his cane tapping softly against the floor. His voice was hoarse but filled with emotion. "You think you're saving this world," he said, addressing the alien directly. "But you're destroying something precious. We're part of this planet, same as any animal or tree. You take us away, and you're taking away something irreplaceable." The alien regarded him silently for a long moment. Then it gestured toward the console again. This time, the projection showed humanity working together, communities rebuilding after disasters, scientists collaborating on solutions, children planting seeds in barren soil. The images were interspersed with flashes of the artifact, emphasizing its role as a bridge between species. The alien's posture relaxed slightly as if considering what it had seen. Dr. Carter seized the opportunity. "We understand now," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "We know we've hurt this planet and we're sorry. But give us time. Help us heal the damage instead of starting over. Together we can create something better, not just for Earth, but for all life." There was another pause, longer this time. The alien turned to confer with its companions, their movement swift and silent. The team held their breath, unsure whether their plea had been enough. Finally, the lead alien turned back to face them. It extended its appendage once more, this time placing it gently on the artifact. A surge of energy coursed through the room, and the projections shifted again. This time they showed a future where humans and aliens worked side by side, restoring forests, cleaning oceans, building sustainable cities. The message was hopeful, but also cautionary. Humanity would have to prove itself worthy of trust. When the energy subsided, the alien spoke, not with words, but directly into their minds. "Prove yourselves," it repeated, echoing the earlier transmission. "Balance must be maintained. Fail, and your kind will cease to exist." With that, the chamber began to dissolve around them. The walls shimmered and faded, replaced by the familiar interior of their spacecraft. Before anyone could react, they were ejected from the Star Destroyer, hurtling back toward Earth. As they descended, the massive alien vessel began to withdraw, ascending higher into the atmosphere before disappearing entirely. The skies cleared, and for the first time in weeks, sunlight broke through the clouds. Back in Seabreeze, the townsfolk erupted into cheers as the spacecraft touched down safely. News of the encounter spread quickly, igniting a spark of hope across the globe. Governments pledged to prioritize environmental conservation, industries vowed to adopt greener practices, and ordinary citizens committed to making small but meaningful changes in their daily lives. The artifact, now quiet and inert, was placed in a secure facility for further study, but its true purpose had already been fulfilled. Though the immediate threat had passed, the memory of the Star Destroyer lingered in everyone's minds. Humanity had been given a second chance, but it came with a stark reminder. The universe was watching, and failure wouldn't be tolerated again. As Dr. Carter gazed out at the horizon, she felt both gratitude and resolve. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time she believed humanity might truly be ready to rise to the challenge. The weeks that followed the Star Destroyer's departure were a whirlwind of activity and transformation. The global response to humanity's second chance was unprecedented, fueled by both fear and determination. Governments convened emergency summits drafting ambitious plans to combat climate change, restore ecosystems, and transition to sustainable energy sources. Corporations faced immense public pressure to abandon harmful practices, with many pledging billions toward green initiatives. Even ordinary citizens took action, organizing community cleanups, planting trees, and reducing waste in their daily lives. It seemed as though the entire world had awakened to the fragility of Earth and the precariousness of its future. In Seabreeze, life slowly began to return to normal. or at least as close to normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. The townsfolk worked tirelessly to repair the damage caused by the alien intervention. Homes destroyed by earthquakes were rebuilt, boats lost to rogue waves replaced, and shattered docks reconstructed. Yet, despite these efforts, the town carried an air of quiet reflection. People spoke less about fishing quotas or tourist seasons and more about how they could contribute to healing the planet. The glowing symbols on the Mariner's Pride had dimmed significantly, but the ship remained anchored in the harbor, a silent sentinel reminding everyone of what had transpired and what still hung in the balance. Dr. Emily Carter became a central figure in the global movement for change. Her experiences aboard the Star Destroyer made her a voice of authority, and she traveled extensively, sharing her story and advocating for urgent environmental reforms. She often returned to Seabreeze, however, drawn back by the artifact and the lingering mysteries surrounding it. Though the crystalline object no longer pulsed with light or emitted vibrations, scientists continued to study it, hoping to unlock further insights into the aliens' technology and intentions. For Emily, it served as both a reminder of humanity's vulnerability and a symbol of its potential. Old Tom, too, found renewed purpose in the aftermath of the crisis. He became something of a local hero, his steadfast optimism inspiring others to persevere even when progress felt slow. Every evening, he walked along the shore, gazing out at the horizon where the Star Destroyer had vanished. Sometimes he brought Jake with him, the two men discussing everything from the strange phenomena they'd witnessed to the mundane challenges of rebuilding their lives. "We got a long way to go," Old Tom would say, tapping his cane against the sand. "But we're moving forward, that's something." Jake, once haunted by his encounter with whatever lurked beneath the waves, now channeled his fears into action. He joined a marine conservation group dedicated to protecting ocean ecosystems, using his skills as a fisherman to monitor water quality and track wildlife populations. His bravery during the mission aboard the spacecraft earned him respect among his peers, and he embraced his role as a leader within the community. Still, there were nights when he woke up drenched in sweat, plagued by memories of the towering alien beings and their cold, calculating gaze. On those nights, he reminded himself of the promise they had made, to prove themselves worthy of survival. Meanwhile, the artifact's influence extended far beyond Seabreeze. Images of it appeared in newspapers, documentaries, and social media posts around the world, becoming a rallying point for environmental activists. Protesters held signs shaped like the crystal, chanting slogans about unity and responsibility. Schools incorporated lessons about the incident into their curricula, teaching children not only about science and history, but also about empathy and stewardship. The artifact became more than just an object. It was a beacon of hope, a tangible reminder that humanity wasn't alone in the universe and that its actions mattered. Yet not everyone welcomed this newfound awareness. Skeptics dismissed the entire event as a hoax, claiming the Star Destroyer was nothing more than advanced human technology disguised as extraterrestrial intervention. Conspiracy theories proliferated online, accusing governments of orchestrating the spectacle to manipulate public opinion. Some even argued that the artifact was a weapon planted by the aliens to control humanity's behavior. While these voices were in the minority, they added another layer of complexity to an already fraught situation. Despite the skepticism, real change began to take root. Renewable energy projects sprang up across the globe, powered by wind, solar, and tidal forces. Deforestation rates plummeted as nations implemented stricter regulations and invested in reforestation programs. Oceans showed signs of recovery, with coral reefs regenerating and fish populations rebounding. Even the weather, which had been so erratic during the aliens' presence, gradually stabilized. Scientists noted improvements in air quality and biodiversity, attributing these positive trends to the collective efforts of individuals, communities, and governments alike. Back in Seabreeze, the changes were visible in small yet meaningful ways. Farmers adopted eco-friendly techniques, fishermen adhered to sustainable quotas, and tourists arrived eager to support environmentally conscious businesses. The town council approved plans to build a memorial park near the harbor, featuring a statue of the mariner's pride surrounded by native plants and flowers. At its base would be an inscription to remind us of where we've been and where we must go. One crisp autumn morning, months after the Star Destroyer's departure, Dr. Carter stood on the dock overlooking the mariner's pride. The ship looked almost peaceful now, its eerie glow replaced by the soft light of dawn. She clutched a notebook in her hands, filled with sketches and notes about the artifact and the visions it had shown her. As she stared at the vessel, she couldn't help but wonder if the aliens were still watching, monitoring humanity's progress from afar. Would they return? And if they did, would they find Earth improved or irreparably damaged? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw old Tom approaching, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Mornin', Doc," he said warmly. "Thought I'd find you here." Emily nodded, returning his smile. "Just thinking," she replied, "about everything that's happened and what comes next." Tom leaned on his cane, gazing at the ship. "It ain't gonna be easy," he admitted. "There'll be days when it feels like we're fighting the whole damn ocean. But we keep pushing. That's all we can do." "You're right," Emily said softly. "And maybe we'll get it right this time." As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting golden light over the harbor, the two stood in silence, united by a shared sense of purpose. Behind them, the town buzzed with activity, children laughing, workers hammering, waves lapping gently against the shore. Life moved forward, carrying with it the weight of lessons learned and promises made. Far above, in the vast expanse of space, the Star Destroyer drifted silently among the stars. Its mission complete. For now, it awaited the outcome of humanity's experiment in redemption. Whether Earth would pass the test remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. The choice lay in the hands of those who called it home. And for the first time in centuries, humanity seemed ready to rise to the challenge.